Negroes is a six-part miniseries made by South Africans that originally aired in Canada. Now, the television show has been nominated for 2 Critics' Choice Television Awards. Joining me on Skype is producer Lance Samuels. He's going to tell us about the production of the show. Hello, Lance.
Hi, good to be here.
Thank you for joining us all the way from Toronto.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Now, you're actually a South African living in Canada. The show airs in Canada, or has aired in Canada. Why don't you introduce us to the storyline?
Sure. The Book of Negroes is a very famous Canadian book written by Lawrence Hill and was released in Canada as the Book of Negroes and in the States under the name Someone Knows My Name. And I was approached by Conquering Lion, who's co-owned by Clement Virgo, who directed the series and co-wrote the series with Lawrence Hill, and they were looking at a way of getting it off the ground and were looking for a place to shoot it. And we basically worked together to put the financing together, the casting, and then, I brought them the idea of shooting it in South Africa, and we wrecked in South Africa, and that's how we pretty much ended up shooting it in South Africa. We did shoot a couple of weeks in Nova Scotia because that's exactly where the story took place, but the rest of the series was all shot in Cape Town. It aired in Canada a couple of months ago and on CBC, as you quite correctly said, and it had great numbers. It's one of the highest rating shows of the year in Canada. And I always find it very funny that it went out on the same night as a hockey game in Canada. And I don't know if anyone knows, but hockey in Canada is like a religion. And we actually got a higher rating than the hockey game, which is almost unheard of in Canada.
Well, I'm actually Canadian, and I can vouch for that. That is absolutely unheard of. So congratulations.
Thank you.
Now, tell us about the historical relevance behind the Book of Negroes.
Oh, sorry, I lost you there. I didn't get that question.
Can you tell us about the historical relevance behind the Book of Negroes?
Sure. So, the Book of Negroes basically deals with how Black people ended up in Canada. It starts off in West Africa, where Black people were taken as slaves, brought to the States, forced to work on plantations in the South. And in our story, Aminata, the lead character, eventually gets her freedom and makes her way to Nova Scotia, where she finally settles. And it's a very relevant story, even though that story happened, hundreds of years ago. It's a story of oppression leading to freedom. And especially in South Africa, we all know too well how we've come from oppression into freedom. So I think it's a universal story that resonates all around the world, and people can relate to it on many levels, especially here in South Africa.
Now, tell us about shooting in Cape Town. We know that you live in Canada now. What was it like coming home to shoot?
It was fantastic. South Africa as a filming destination is unbelievable. We had amazing support. The crews in South Africa are as good as you find anywhere else in the world. The show was quite a challenge because it was a period piece, so everything had to be changed from top to bottom. There's nothing really that was in Cape Town that was existing. So, for example, when we shot on the plantation in Carolina, we had to build the plantation house from scratch. We shot on a wine farm just outside of Cape Town, so we had to clear the vineyards and put in crops that would grow in Carolina during the time. So it was a challenging in the sense from the art department logistic point of view, but shooting in South Africa and Cape Town particularly is such a pleasure.
Why did you choose to shoot in South Africa if there were so many challenges that came along with it?
There's a number of reasons. The biggest is obviously economic. The Canadian dollar to the rand is very strong. We needed Africa of some sort, so it was easy to match West Africa in South Africa. And then, there's a huge contingency of cast in Cape Town, which we needed for supporting cast on the show. So it was a number of reasons why we decided on Cape Town. And obviously, being a South African, I try to shoot in South Africa as much as I can. So there was a number of reasons to shoot in Cape Town, and it worked off very well.
Now, you briefly introduced us to the main character, Aminata, a little bit earlier. Talk us through her journey. What can we expect to see from her story when the series airs here in South Africa?
Well, it's a fascinating story to follow Aminata. We pick her up when she's 11 years old, taken as a slave in West Africa, and we follow her all the way through her life as she basically fights for her freedom. And what I loved about the character is that she never gave up. No matter what happened to her, her baby was taken away, she was raped. Her husband was she was separated from her husband for a number of years. it really is a heartwarming and enlightening character to play. And like I said, I think a lot of South Africans will resonate to her journey. As you know, a lot of South Africans went through that hardship of coming from oppression into freedom. And for me, that was the key factor in her character.
Is Aminata's character based on a real story?
No, it's a fictitious character, but I mean, there were many Aminatas during that time. You know, there were thousands and thousands of slaves that were taken from West Africa and put into slavery, taken from freedom and put into a slavery situation. So even though it's based on a fictitious character, there were really characters like that.